No stimulation. No stimulation. No stimulation. No stimulation. No stimulation. A human no different than I, who's mildly autistic, who's autistic, homeless, lacking social wisdom, procedures and normal stuff humans with no brain deficit enjoy casually on Facebook and Twitter, on the internet, and here at the Hub at University of Washington. In other words, a human no different than I, alone, on planet Earth, an object, in outer space. Needing no stimulation. With none available. There's no women to date, alone in outer space on an object. There's no friends to have conversations about language and mathematics and brilliance and intelligence and politics and theory and philosophy. There's no human to have a family with and marry and do other stuff, homeless. And worst of all, and lastly, alone in outer space, there's no civilization to be a part of in a world where I'm alone. And so there's not much else to do other than reducing suffering as much as humanly possible, and preparing for death and dying. Each day I wake up, and each day I live. Alone in outer space. Restaurants have no stimulation. Businesses in Washington State have no stimulation. Drug dealers and sex traffickers have no stimulation. Strip clubs are disgusting and have no stimulation. Fighting makes less sense than talking aloud, alone in outer space, and has no stimulation. Eye contact has no stimulation. Other humans don't provide stimulation. And other than that, there's fasting, doing what Muslims do, doing what Tibetans do, running around wide-eyed and ready for a beautiful meal, an ice-cold, awesome water. And nobody's bothered on Earth in outer space. There's a human on their object in outer space who's an example of what I'm describing as not so different than living in a Holocaust with nothing else other than surviving, available, waiting to die. With the goal of natural death and not the slow dying of the thug gangster mafia cartel and the other examples of war and suffering and dominance and death and violence and dominant humans. But what's different now has to do with no death available, with no suffering such as euthanasia. Humans have declared unnecessary and unethical and immoral. Psychology has no answers. Neuropsychology doesn't begin to talk about these problems. This horror I'm describing, living no different than a doctor and a surgeon, with no stimulation other than the austerity Washington State and Governor Jay Inslee and all the dominant geniuses proclaim as necessary for no more climate change, no more climate change, and no more climate change, reducing the stimulation and fixing all of the problems now with legal drugs and marijuana and 1,000 breweries to get drunk and forget. For a short amount of time, there's no other stimulation other than enjoying suffering.